Welcome to ASMR Stories. Today we'll be exploring 20 of the world's unsolved mysteries. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Number 1. The Voynich Manuscript, a garden of secrets. In the quiet hush of a Renaissance library, somewhere in early 15th century Europe, an artist and scribe hunched over vellum. The manuscript they were crafting would become one of the greatest puzzles in literary history. Yet today, it lies not in mystery's shadow, but in the warm light of wonder. It is called the Voynich Manuscript. Housed now in Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book Library, the manuscript is about the size of a modern paperback, bound in aging calfskin, but its pages bloom with inked riddles. There are over 200 folios of looping, flowing script, an unknown language that no one has ever been able to read. The letters seem familiar at first glance, echoing Latin or Middle English, yet they defy all attempts at translation. No cipher has cracked its code. No Rosetta Stone has ever surfaced. Alongside the text are whimsical, almost playful illustrations. Delicate plants grow tall in fine green lines and soft ochre petals, some real, some purely imaginary. Naked women bathe in interconnected pools and pipes, suggesting a strangely serene water system. Diagrams of stars and circular charts suggest astronomy, or perhaps something more metaphysical. For centuries, the book passed quietly from hand to hand. In 1912, it came into the possession of Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish book dealer whose name now marks the mystery. From the moment he acquired it, the manuscript captivated cryptographers, historians, and codebreakers, including American and British intelligence services during World War II. None could decipher its meaning. What makes the Voynich manuscript so gently compelling is not just the mystery itself, but the sense of craftsmanship. Whoever made it, whether a sincere scholar, a master hoaxer, or a dreamer from another age, put care and beauty into every page. It feels as though the book wants to be understood, as though its secrets are not meant to frighten, but to invite gentle curiosity. Some believe it is a lost herbal guide, others a coded scientific treatise. More romantic theories suggest it is the journal of a forgotten alchemist, or even a guidebook for another world. But maybe its purpose is simpler. Perhaps it was always meant to be a puzzle, a thing of beauty made for those who enjoy the quiet thrill of not knowing. So the Voynich manuscript sits in its climate-controlled case, its mysteries intact, its pages unbroken by time. It has become less a problem to solve, and more a place to visit, like a secret garden, glimpsed in the corner of an old estate. You may never fully enter, but oh, how peaceful it is to peer through the gate. The Mary Celeste, ghost ship in the sunlight. On December 4th, 1872, a British brig named Dei Gratia spotted another vessel adrift in the Atlantic, halfway between the Azores and Portugal. It was the Mary Celeste, a sleek brigantine that had left New York 8 days before her sister ship. The ocean was calm, the sun was shining. And yet, something was wrong. Captain David Morehouse of the Dei Gratia sent a boarding party. They found the Mary Celeste deserted. Not a soul on board. The ship was in good shape. No signs of struggle. No storm damage. Her cargo of 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol was largely untouched. There was enough food and water for 6 months. The crew's personal belongings remained undisturbed. Even a sewing machine was found neatly in place. And yet, the lifeboat was gone. The ship's logbook offered little insight. The last entry was dated 10 days earlier, when they were near the Azores. The chronometer and sextant were missing. Tools perhaps taken if the crew had evacuated. But why would experienced sailors abandon a perfectly seaworthy ship? Theories bloomed like sea foam on a restless tide. Some suggested a sudden waterspout or undersea tremor spooked the captain. Others imagined a fire scare caused by alcohol fumes, prompting a temporary evacuation gone wrong. There were darker whispers too: piracy, mutiny, foul play. But the evidence, or lack thereof, remains serene in its quiet puzzlement. What truly elevates the mystery of the Mary Celeste beyond maritime lore is its absence of horror. No blood, no damage, no final message scribbled in desperation. Just a drifting ship, swaying softly in the ocean light, as though the crew had simply stepped off for a moment and forgotten to return. The ship herself had a curious past. Originally named Amazon, she had been plagued by minor misfortunes and changes in ownership. After the abandonment, she was towed to Gibraltar, where a salvage hearing took place. But suspicion lingered. How could such a thing happen in plain daylight, with no one to witness it? Eventually, the Mary Celeste was released and sailed again, though misfortune clung to her keel. She would be wrecked in 1885 off the coast of Haiti, under suspicious circumstances. Her final resting place remains unknown. To this day, no conclusive answer has ever been found. The story of the Mary Celeste endures not because it terrifies, but because it soothes in its strangeness. A ship adrift in the sunlit sea, empty yet untouched, as though it had quietly slipped into another chapter of history, one not yet written. In a world that often clamours for certainty, the Mary Celeste offers instead a gentle reminder: some things are not broken, only unsolved. Number 3. The Beale Ciphers, treasure buried in silence. In the foothills of Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains, legend speaks of buried gold, millions of dollars worth, hidden beneath the earth since the early 1800s. But if the treasure exists, no one has found it. All we have are 3 pages of coded text and a name: Thomas Jefferson Beale. According to the tale, it began in 1820 when a man named Robert Morris, the owner of a quiet inn in Lynchburg, received a locked iron box from a mysterious traveller. Beale, a tall and courteous gentleman from Virginia, had stayed at the inn years earlier, departing just as mysteriously as he had arrived. The box was left with instructions. If Beale did not return within 10 years, Morris was to open it. 2 decades passed before curiosity overcame caution. Morris opened the box and found a letter, along with 3 pages of numbers, each a string of digits that appeared to be ciphers. The letter, in neat and elegant English, told of a party of men who had discovered a rich vein of gold and silver while hunting buffalo near Santa Fe in 1818. To safeguard their discovery, they transported the treasure eastward and buried it in Bedford County, Virginia. Each of the 3 ciphers, Beale explained, revealed a piece of the mystery. One described the location of the treasure, another listed the contents, and the last named the heirs to whom the riches rightfully belonged. Only one of the 3 codes has ever been solved. A man named James B. Ward published the ciphers and Beale's letter in an 1885 pamphlet, claiming the second cipher had been decoded using the Declaration of Independence as a key. This revealed a brief description of the treasure: thousands of pounds of gold, hundreds of pounds of silver, and a few precious jewels, all hidden for safekeeping. But the other 2 ciphers, they've resisted every attempt at decoding. Amateur sleuths, cryptanalysts, and treasure hunters have tried for over a century. Some believe the whole affair was a hoax, a clever story to sell pamphlets. Others are convinced the treasure is still out there, waiting beneath the Virginia soil, just a shovel's depth away. What keeps this mystery so enchanting is its quiet dignity. There's no violence, no villain, just the whisper of untold wealth and the timeless challenge of a code waiting to be cracked. The Beale ciphers feel less like a riddle and more like an invitation to patience, to curiosity, to the joy of wondering. Perhaps the real treasure isn't gold at all. Perhaps it's the gentle delight of an unsolved puzzle, passed from generation to generation, always just out of reach. 4. The lost Roanoke colony, a word carved in time. In the late 16th century, long before Jamestown or Plymouth, a small band of English settlers arrived on the sandy shores of Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Their mission, commissioned by Queen Elizabeth I and backed by Sir Walter Raleigh, was bold and hopeful: to establish England's first permanent colony in the New World. They brought with them dreams of opportunity, courage, and the quiet hope of planting a future across the sea. But within just a few years, the colony would vanish, leaving behind one of history's gentlest puzzles and a single word carved into a tree: Croatoan. The story began in 1587, when around 115 settlers, including women and children, landed on Roanoke. Among them was Ellen Adair, daughter of the colony's governor, John White. Days after arrival, she gave birth to the first English child born in the Americas, Virginia Dare. It was a moment of optimism for the struggling group. But supplies dwindled. Relations with the local tribes became strained, and within months, Governor White sailed back to England to gather reinforcements and provisions. War with Spain delayed his return. When he finally came back, 3 years had passed. Roanoke was silent. The settlement had been dismantled, not destroyed, just cleared away, as though it had been packed up peacefully. There were no graves, no signs of struggle. Just that single word etched into a palisade post: Croatoan, the name of a nearby island and of a friendly native tribe. A second clue, crow, was found carved into a tree. White had instructed the colonists to carve a Maltese cross into a tree if they were forced to leave by danger or threat. None was found. All signs suggested the group had left deliberately and calmly. For centuries, people have speculated. Did they join the Croatoan people and assimilate? Did they sail north in search of safer shores? Were they lost to storm, disease, or the wilds of the continent? Modern historians and archaeologists have found tantalizing hints. A bit of English pottery here, a few European-style tools there, but no definitive proof. Some believe the settlers may have gradually blended into indigenous communities, their story becoming one of quiet adaptation rather than tragedy. And maybe that's what makes Roanoke's mystery feel so gentle. It's not the story of a violent disappearance, but of a whisper left in bark. Croatoan, a clue that feels less like a warning and more like a memory. A word passed through time like a message in a bottle. The lost colony still stirs imaginations, not because it was destroyed, but because it departed, leaving behind the soft trace of its passage and the eternal invitation to wonder where they went. Number 5. Amelia Earhart's disappearance. Into the blue. In the golden age of flight, when airplanes still felt like magic and the world was shrinking with each new journey, one woman stood at the forefront of the skies. Amelia Earhart, with her soft smile and steel will, became an icon, not just of aviation, but of courage, curiosity, and grace. By the 1930s, Earhart was already a legend. She was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, had set numerous speed and altitude records, and championed women's rights with the quiet, persistent strength of someone who knew the sky was never the limit. In 1937, she set out on her most ambitious journey yet, to fly around the world along the equator, the longest route possible. With her navigator, Fred Noonan, she departed in a twin-engine Lockheed Electra. They crossed continents and oceans, overcoming mechanical hiccups, stormy weather, and exhaustion. By late June, they had made it to Lae, New Guinea, with just 7,000 miles to go. On July 2nd, they took off toward Howland Island, a tiny speck of land in the vast Pacific, barely 2 kilometers long, ringed with coral and almost invisible from the air. A US Coast Guard vessel, the Itasca, waited nearby to guide her in by radio. But something went wrong. As she neared her destination, Earhart's voice crackled through the static. "We are on the line, 157-337. We are running on line north and south." Her tone was calm, determined, but she sounded lost. The Itasca never saw her plane. And then, silence. Search ships and planes scoured the sea for weeks. No trace of wreckage, no life rafts, no oil slicks, just the vast blue quiet. For decades since, theories have floated like clouds. Did she crash into the ocean and sink beneath the waves? Did she land on Nikumaroro, an uninhabited atoll nearby, surviving as a castaway for a time? Artifacts have been found. Fragments of makeup compacts, a woman's shoe, pieces of an aircraft, but nothing conclusive. Others imagine more elaborate possibilities: capture, espionage, a secret life. But in truth, perhaps the most comforting answer is the simplest, that she flew boldly into the unknown in search of a path no one had charted before. Amelia Earhart's disappearance is one of the world's most enduring mysteries, not because it is tragic, but because it is beautifully unfinished. Her story ends mid-sentence, like a poem left open, and in that silence, we don't find fear, we find awe. She didn't fall. She flew further than anyone else dared, and into the most peaceful part of history's skies, the place where mystery and admiration meet. Number 6. D.B. Cooper, a gentleman, vanishes into the sky. It was the afternoon before Thanksgiving, November the 24th, 1971. A man dressed in a dark suit, carrying a black briefcase, stepped up to the Northwest Orient Airlines counter at Portland International Airport. He gave his name as Dan Cooper, though the world would come to know him as D.B. Cooper. He boarded Flight 305, bound for Seattle, a short 30-minute hop. Passengers described him as polite, calm, even charming. He ordered a bourbon and soda. He lit a cigarette. And shortly after takeoff, he handed a note to a flight attendant. The note was simple. He had a bomb. He opened his briefcase just enough to show a glimpse of wires and red sticks. He made no threats, raised no voice. He simply made a demand. $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting in Seattle for the next leg of the journey. The airline and FBI complied. When the plane landed, Cooper released all 36 passengers in exchange for the ransom. He kept the crew on board and asked them to fly him south toward Mexico City at low altitude and with the rear stairs lowered. An unusual request, but not impossible. Then, somewhere over the dense forests of Washington state, during heavy rain and pitch-dark sky, he jumped. With the ransom strapped to his body and 2 parachutes, Cooper disappeared into the night. He was never seen again. The FBI launched one of the most exhaustive manhunts in American history. They combed the woods, interviewed hundreds, tracked serial numbers from the bills. Nothing. It was as though he had vanished, not just from the plane, but from time itself. Nearly a decade later, in 1980, a young boy digging near the Columbia River discovered a bundle of decaying $20 bills. Matching Cooper's ransom, serial numbers intact, but no other trace has ever been found. Theories have fluttered like autumn leaves. Some say he died in the fall. Others claim he was an experienced parachutist who walked away and lived quietly ever after. A former military man, a skydiver, a rogue romantic. What makes the story of D.B. Cooper so unusually comforting is the tone of it all. There was no violence, no chaos, just a man with a plan, a drink in his hand, and a mystery that has outlasted the Cold War, disco, and even the FBI's official investigation, which closed in 2016. Somewhere in the tall pines of the Pacific Northwest, perhaps, the legend of D.B. Cooper still walks, less an outlaw than a question mark wearing sunglasses, a mystery not meant to be feared but quietly admired. Jimmy Hoffa, a man larger than his shadow. There are some names in history that seem to echo beyond their time. Jimmy Hoffa was one of them, a man who shaped American labor in the 20th century, who stood at the intersection of power, politics, and progress. He was bold, tenacious, and often controversial. And then, one day in 1975, he was simply gone. On July 30th of that year, Hoffa was scheduled to meet two acquaintances at the Match's Red Fox restaurant in suburban Detroit. It was a warm afternoon. He had recently been working on regaining leadership in the Teamsters Union after serving prison time, still a powerful figure, still a household name. But he never came home. His car was found in the parking lot, his wallet, his watch, never recovered. No one saw him leave, and no one heard from him again. It was as if the most recognizable labor leader in America had quietly stepped out of the room and left the door swinging in the breeze. Theories, of course, followed. Some whispered of mafia connections and secret deals. Others pointed to political enemies or hidden betrayals. Yet through it all, there has never been a body, no final message, no certainty, only shadows stretching across the decades. But this is not a frightening tale. In fact, there's something almost cinematic, elegant even, about the way Hoffa vanished. No chaos, no confirmed violence, just a man wrapped in myth, stepping off the stage when the spotlight was still warm. Hoffa's life was nothing if not dynamic. Born in 1913, he rose through the ranks of organized labor with unmatched energy. He helped build the Teamsters into one of the most powerful unions in the world, giving working-class Americans more rights, better wages, and louder voices. He was both admired and feared, respected and scrutinized. And now, his story is not defined by what was found, but by what was left behind, a question mark carved into American history. Over the years, excavations have taken place beneath stadiums, parking lots, rural fields. But nothing concrete has emerged, only mystery and memory. In some ways, Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance feels less like a crime and more like a curtain call. A man whose life was filled with noise and tension, whose final act was one of perfect silence. Not a tragedy, just an ending that slipped out of view, like a ship sailing gently into a horizon none of us could quite follow. And in that quiet, his legend lives on, unchanged, unresolved, and forever calmly drifting between fact and folklore. Number 8. Malaysian Flight MH370, a flight into stillness. It was a clear night on March 8, 2014, when Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur, bound for Beijing. The Boeing 777 was one of the safest aircraft ever built, carrying 239 people from 14 different countries. Among them were families, business travelers, honeymooners, and crew. Most had settled in for a routine 6-hour flight, but less than an hour after takeoff, as the plane cruised smoothly at 35,000 feet, it did something unexpected. It vanished from radar, without a distress call, without warning, without a trace. What followed was the most expansive and expensive search in aviation history, spanning years and oceans. Satellites and sonar, ships and aircraft, all were deployed across thousands of miles. And while scattered fragments of debris eventually washed ashore on distant beaches, the aircraft's main wreckage has never been found. How could a modern airplane disappear in an age of global tracking? Investigators pieced together fragments of data from satellite handshakes, concluding the plane had made a sharp turn west, then continued south over the Indian Ocean. They developed a likely crash zone, a desolate stretch of sea west of Australia known as the Seventh Arc. But after years of careful searching across that deep, remote expanse, the sea gave up only silence. Theories have emerged, as they always do. Mechanical failure, hijacking, even the possibility of deliberate action by someone on board. Yet none are confirmed. None offer certainty. Only questions remain. And yet, despite the tragedy of its loss, the story of MH370 has unfolded not as a tale of terror, but one of quiet, aching wonder. There were no Mayday calls, no signs of struggle, just a plane following a ghostly path through the dark sky, tracked only by shadows and mathematics. For many, the mystery has become less about conspiracy and more about space, the vastness of our oceans, the edges of our understanding, and how small we all are in comparison. In some quiet way, MH370 reminds us that we are still explorers, still vulnerable to the unknown. It speaks to the majesty of our world as much as its mystery, and it draws us together in shared empathy. For the families who wait, for the investigators who still search, for the sky that still holds its secret. Even now, as waves roll over the suspected crash site, there's a kind of peace to it all. No storm, no fire, just a journey that ended somewhere beyond reach, in the still heart of the sea. Number 9, Jack the Ripper, the unnamed figure in the fog. In the autumn of 1888, the narrow cobblestone streets of Whitechapel, a working-class district in East London, were shrouded in more than just fog. They were veiled in curiosity. That season, a series of grim events would come to define a mystery that has lasted more than a century. But over time, the sharp edges of those events have softened, leaving behind not horror, but a strange, misty legend, an enduring question floating gently through history. The figure known as Jack the Ripper is remembered not for who he was, but for who he wasn't. He was never caught. He never revealed his name. All we know is that someone, operating in the quiet shadows of Victorian London, committed 5 unsolved crimes, all within a few square blocks. It was a brief window of time, just a few weeks, but it created ripples that continue to travel outward. What keeps this case alive is not the violence, but the absence of resolution. In an age when street lamps were still gaslit and horses pulled carriages over stone, the Ripper story represented a modern puzzle wrapped in fog and ink. The press, newly empowered by literacy and printing technology, gave the mystery its momentum. Newspapers spread sensational stories. Letters arrived claiming to be from the Ripper himself, though most were likely fabrications. Still, the public was captivated, not unlike readers of detective novels just becoming popular at the time. Over the years, hundreds of suspects have been proposed. Doctors, writers, barbers, even members of royalty. With no confirmed culprit, the identity of Jack the Ripper has become less a criminal profile and more a canvas, each new theory painting a different portrait, shaped by the fears and fascinations of its era. But if you strip away the speculation and the Gothic drama, what remains is something almost quiet. A handful of case files, a few yellowing police notes, the long-lost voices of investigators who walk the same alleys with lanterns and leather boots, wondering who might be watching from the shadows. Today, those same alleys are walked by historians and tourists, not in fear, but in wonder. The streets of Whitechapel have changed, the old fog has lifted, and what's left is not dread, but a feeling of distance, of unsolved things, of questions that now belong more to history than crime. Jack the Ripper, once a source of unease, has become a symbol of the enduring mystery, the kind that invites curiosity more than fear. He is a whisper in the margins of time, lingering not because of what he did, but because of what we may never know. Number 10. The Lost City of Atlantis. A dream. Beneath the waves. Long before satellites mapped our oceans or divers plumbed their depths, there was a story so vivid and detailed that people have been searching for it for over 2,000 years. It was the tale of a magnificent island civilization, rich in wisdom, gold, and harmony. A place of soaring temples, serene canals, and enlightened citizens. It was called Atlantis. The first and only original source of the Atlantis story comes from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who wrote about it in two of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, around 360 BCE. According to Plato, Atlantis was a great naval power situated beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. In a time long before his own, Atlantis flourished as a beacon of knowledge and wealth, until, in a single day and night of misfortune, it was said to have sunk into the sea. Was Plato recounting a historical truth passed down through centuries? Or was he crafting an allegory, a metaphor for human pride and the fall of empires? That question has lingered like a quiet ripple across time. Since then, Atlantis has never quite left us. It appears in maps and margins, in poems and political speeches, in dreamlike paintings and utopian blueprints. Philosophers, explorers, and scientists from the Renaissance to the 21st century have pondered its possible location. Was it the island of Santorini, once rocked by volcanic eruption, or the sunken plain near the coast of Spain? Could it have been Antarctica before the ice? Or was it never meant to be found? The beauty of the Atlantis mystery lies in its gentleness. There's no malevolence in the legend, no ghosts, no curses, only the memory of something extraordinary that may or may not have been real. It's a story people return to not because they fear it, but because it soothes the imagination. Atlantis represents a world we like to think once existed, harmonious, advanced, peaceful. It embodies the eternal human hope that somewhere, sometime, someone figured out how to live wisely and well. And if it existed once, maybe we can build it again. Even today, sonar scans of the ocean floor occasionally spark headlines. New clues to Atlantis. But the mystery remains untouched, preserved like coral beneath centuries of curiosity. Atlantis may never rise again, but in the calm corners of our minds, it never sank. It still glimmers below the waves of history, not as a city of stone, but as a serene symbol of what might have been. Number 11. The Nazca Lines, messages written on Earth. In the quiet deserts of southern Peru, where the sun hangs high and the wind rarely speaks, something remarkable lies hidden in plain sight. From the ground, it's hard to notice anything unusual. Just flat, dry earth stretching for miles. But if you take to the skies, climbing above in a small plane or drone, a delicate and beautiful puzzle emerges. Vast geoglyphs carved into the desert floor, forming elegant patterns, animals, and lines that run impossibly straight for kilometers. These are the Nazca Lines, and they have been waiting silently for someone to understand them for more than 1,500 years. The Nazca people, who lived in this region between 200 BCE and 600 CE, etched these figures into the arid landscape by removing the top layer of reddish-brown stone to reveal the lighter soil beneath. What makes them extraordinary is not just their size or number, there are hundreds, but their precision and the fact that they've remained virtually unchanged, protected by the desert's stillness. From above, one can see a graceful hummingbird, a monkey with a curling tail, a spider with perfect symmetry. There are also straight lines that stretch over hills and across valleys, Some aligned with the sunrise or the stars. Other shapes, trapezoids, spirals, and geometric forms, add to the mystery. Why did they make them? The truth is, no one knows for certain. Some scholars suggest they were astronomical calendars, used to track solstices or the flow of water. Others believe they were ceremonial pathways, routes walked during religious rituals, perhaps to call upon the gods for rain in this dry land. Some ideas are more poetic, that the lines were meant for the sky itself, messages to the heavens written on the earth below, and maybe, in some way, that's exactly what they were. What makes the Nazca Lines so comforting is not the need to solve them, but the chance to appreciate them. They are ancient works of art, created not in haste, but with care and purpose, traced by people whose names we do not know, whose faces we can only imagine, but whose touch remains, gentle as a breath on the land. And in a modern world filled with noise, there's peace in knowing that long ago, someone took the time to draw a perfect hummingbird in the middle of the desert, with no audience but the stars. The Nazca Lines don't demand answers. They invite us to look, to wonder, and to enjoy the quiet beauty of things made simply for the sake of meaning, whatever that meaning may be. Number 12. The Antikythera Mechanism. Time's forgotten machine. In 1901, off the rocky coast of the tiny Greek island of Antikythera, sponge divers discovered the remains of a Roman-era shipwreck, its bronze cargo scattered across the seabed like lost treasure. Among the amphorae and statues, they recovered something odd, at first mistaken for a lump of corroded metal and stone. It wasn't until decades later that this curious artifact revealed itself for what it truly was, a mechanism, a collection of interlocking bronze gears, dials, and inscriptions. Weathered by time but intricate beyond belief, it would come to be known as the Antikythera Mechanism, and it quietly reshaped what we thought we knew about the ancient world. Dating back to around 100 BCE, the mechanism is often called the world's first analog computer. Though worn and incomplete, it's believed to have been used to predict the positions of celestial bodies, sun, moon, planets, as well as eclipses, phases of the moon, and even the timing of the Olympic Games. It is a masterpiece of design. Over 30 bronze gears arranged in layers, each tooth shaped by hand, each dial marked with astonishing mathematical precision. When turned by a small handle, the gears would have rotated smoothly, like clockwork, showing not just the passage of time, but the graceful dance of the heavens. And yet, no other device like it appears again for more than 1,000 years. How did such advanced knowledge arise and then vanish? The Antikythera Mechanism doesn't whisper of conspiracies or catastrophe. It speaks instead to the quiet brilliance of minds long past and the fragile nature of human progress. Somewhere in the scrolls of Alexandria or the workshops of Rhodes, engineers once knew how to build such wonders, until war, fire, or simply time itself allowed that knowledge to fade. It wasn't until CT scans and 3D reconstructions in the 21st century that researchers fully appreciated its complexity. Even today, scholars are still decoding the tiny Greek inscriptions etched into its surface, letters no taller than 2 millimeters, written in a calm and steady hand. The mechanism now rests in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, displayed like a fragment of a dream, half machine, half mystery. There is something deeply comforting about it, not just in its elegance, but in the idea that curiosity, ingenuity, and beauty are not inventions of modernity. They've always been with us. The Antikythera Mechanism reminds us that humanity has always looked to the sky, not just to survive, but to understand. And even when the gears stop turning, the wonder remains. Number 13. Cleopatra's Lost Tomb. A queen's final silence. In the golden twilight of ancient Egypt, amidst columns and marble courtyards, ruled a queen who would become a legend. Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt, has been remembered not only for her political acumen and intellect, but also for her role in one of history's great love stories, her alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Her life was recorded in scrolls and sculpture, echoed in poetry and drama, but her final resting place, like a whisper lost to the wind, has never been found. According to classical historians like Plutarch, Cleopatra and Mark Antony died together in 30 BCE after Octavian's forces closed in on Alexandria. Plutarch claimed that they were buried side by side in a grand tomb, in a manner fitting their royal dignity, a peaceful, eternal rest for two people who defied empires. But where is that tomb? Despite centuries of searching, no one has ever definitively located it. Some believe it lies beneath the modern city of Alexandria, buried beneath layers of time, sand, and seawater. Earthquakes and coastal erosion over the past 2,000 years have swallowed much of ancient Alexandria, including the fabled palace quarter. Other scholars suggest the tomb may lie farther inland, near Taposiris Magna, a temple complex southwest of the city. There, archaeologists have found clues, ancient tunnels, a sealed burial chamber, coins bearing Cleopatra's image, but still no definitive answer. What makes the mystery so gentle is its quiet dignity. This isn't the story of a treasure chest lost to time, but of a person, someone powerful, yes, but also human. A mother, a philosopher, a ruler caught between eras. The world often remembers Cleopatra through the lens of romance and tragedy, but in truth, she was an extraordinary leader. She spoke 9 languages. She studied mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. She navigated one of the most complex political landscapes in history with poise and purpose. Her missing tomb, rather than feeling ominous, adds to her sense of grace. There is serenity in knowing that some figures do not fade because we bury them. They become even more timeless because we do not. Perhaps the most fitting tribute to Cleopatra is not finding her tomb at all. Perhaps it's in the wondering, the imagining, in the idea that somewhere beneath Egyptian soil, she still rests quietly beside the man she chose to die with, together, undisturbed, beyond the reach of time and empire, and maybe, like her reign, her final resting place is not meant to be found, only remembered. Number 14. Stonehenge's origins. Circles of stillness. On the open plains of Salisbury, in southern England, a quiet circle of stones stands against the sky. Some lean slightly with age. Others rise upright like sentinels. These are the stones of Stonehenge, and they have been waiting, patiently, unchanging, for over 4,000 years. The structure is both simple and grand. A ring of massive sarsen stones arranged in a circular layout, some capped with horizontal lintels, all standing within a larger earthwork enclosure. But beneath that simplicity lies one of the world's oldest and most gentle mysteries. Why was Stonehenge built? And by whom? Archaeologists agree the site was constructed in stages, beginning around 3000 BCE. Before the stones were raised, it was a sacred gathering place, marked by ditches, wooden posts, and ceremonial burials. Over centuries, builders moved stones weighing up to 25 tons, some from as far as 150 miles away in Wales. The effort must have taken thousands of people, working with nothing but wooden sledges, ropes, and determination. Yet the monument was built not for kings or war, but seemingly for time itself. Stonehenge is carefully aligned with the movements of the sun. On the summer solstice, the first light of dawn shines through the heelstone and into the heart of the circle. On the winter solstice, the sun sets perfectly between the tallest stones. It's as if the builders wanted to mark the turning of seasons, to celebrate the rhythm of light and life. Some believe Stonehenge was an astronomical calendar. Others see it as a place of healing, a sanctuary where people gathered from distant lands. More recent studies have revealed evidence of music, feasting, and shared rituals, hints of community, connection, and perhaps even joy. What is most comforting about Stonehenge is its stillness. Unlike myths filled with conflict or danger, this site holds its mystery in silence. The stones do not shout, they listen. They have witnessed millennia of rising suns, blooming flowers, and distant clouds drifting past. And in that, they invite us not to solve them, but to stand beside them. Visitors today walk slowly around the outer ring, often pausing in quiet reverence. Children touch the grass, elderly couples gaze at the sky, and somewhere in between, each person senses something ancient and unknowable and entirely peaceful. Perhaps the answer to Stonehenge isn't a single meaning at all. Perhaps it was a place for reflection, for marking time, for remembering that we are part of something bigger. A circle, after all, has no beginning and no end. Number 15, the Piri Reis Map, lines drawn from memory. In 1929, as the dust of forgotten centuries was being swept away from the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, scholars uncovered something unexpected. A map. It was drawn on gazelle skin, beautifully coloured, carefully labelled, and centuries old. What made this map extraordinary was not just its age, but what it showed. Created in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis, the map depicted the known world of the time with stunning clarity. The western coast of Africa, Europe's Iberian Peninsula, and even the northern shores of South America appeared with remarkable accuracy. But most astonishing of all, just off the bottom edge of the parchment, was something that looked like Antarctica. Not only that, but it seemed to show the continent without ice. How could a 16th century sailor know the shape of a landmass buried beneath miles of frozen sheet? Even today, our modern maps of ice-free Antarctica rely on satellite data and radar. Yet here it was, drawn in ink by hand, hundreds of years before the continent was officially discovered. According to Piri Reis's own notes, he compiled his map using older sources, charts from Greek, Roman, and possibly even Phoenician explorers. He referenced 20 charts and mappae mundi from ancient seafarers, suggesting that the map was less his own creation and more a synthesis of deep memory. An atlas of echoes from lost civilizations. Was it proof that ancient mariners had once sailed to the farthest corners of the world? Or was it coincidence, a result of artistic guesswork and imaginative cartography? We may never know. But what makes the Piri Reis Map so calming is its subtle defiance of certainty. It doesn't scream for attention. It invites reflection. There are no monsters on its seas, no warnings in the margins. Just place names in elegant Ottoman Turkish, compass roses like flowers, and a soft wash of watercolours that hint at coastlines and currents. Piri Reis himself was a man of learning, a naval commander who valued both the stars and the pen. His map was only a fragment, likely part of a larger world chart now lost to time. But even in fragmentary form, it reminds us of something both human and hopeful. That people, across ages and empires, have always looked outward, curious and unafraid. Today, the Piri Reis Map rests quietly in a glass case, the ink faded but intact. It doesn't ask us to solve anything. It simply reminds us that the world has always been a place of wonder, and that sometimes the most beautiful mysteries are the ones drawn with care and passed hand to hand across the centuries. Number 16. The Peking Man Fossils, bones that wandered away. In the hills of Zhoukoudian, about 30 miles southwest of Beijing, China, lies a cave that once echoed with firelight and footsteps, sounds long since faded into earth and stone. In the early 20th century, archaeologists digging in this quiet place uncovered something remarkable. the fossilized remains of an early human, now known as Peking Man. The discovery was groundbreaking. Peking Man belonged to Homo erectus, a species that walked the earth nearly 700,000 years ago. His bones told a story of fire-making, tool use, and community. These were not just bones, but bridges, connecting us to a deep, ancient version of ourselves. By the 1930s, more than 200 fossilized teeth, skull fragments, and bones from at least 15 individuals had been carefully excavated from the site. The remains were kept safely at the Peking Union Medical College, studied by scientists from around the world. They represented one of the most significant discoveries in the history of human evolution. And then, they vanished. As World War II loomed in East Asia, arrangements were made to ship the fossils to the United States for safekeeping. The crates were carefully packed. Documentation was prepared. The bones were last seen in 1941 at the port of Qinhuangdao, ready to be loaded onto a ship bound for America. But they never arrived. Some say the fossils were lost at sea. Others whisper of wartime looting, hidden caches, or even secret storage within China itself. The shipping company had no final record. No wreckage was ever found. And so, the original bones of Peking Man slipped into the folds of time, leaving behind only casts and memories. What makes this mystery so calming, despite its historical weight, is its simplicity. There is no conspiracy, no villain, just the slow unfolding of history's uncertainty, an accident perhaps, or a case of protection that never reached its final destination. And even without the original fossils, Peking Man's story hasn't been silenced. The Zhoukoudian site is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and excavations continue. More recent discoveries from the area add new layers to what we know. The story lives on, not in frustration, but in quiet continuity. Sometimes, in the grand sweep of history, even the most important objects can go walking, not in anger, not in fear, just slowly, gently, into the unknown. And perhaps, one day, tucked in an old crate or buried beneath forgotten soil, Peking Man will return. Until then, his absence is its own kind of presence, a peaceful echo reminding us that even the earliest humans left more mystery than answers. Number 17. Mallory and Irvine on Everest vanished at the roof of the world. On the morning of June 8, 1924, two men stepped into the thin air near the summit of Mount Everest, wrapped in wool and canvas, their ice axes glinting in the rising sun. One was George Mallory, a schoolteacher and philosopher with a poet's heart. The other was Andrew Sandy Irvine, a young engineer barely 22, quiet, brilliant, and calm under pressure. They were attempting something that had never been done before, reaching the summit of the world's tallest mountain, long before modern gear, oxygen systems, or satellite phones. And they never returned. They were last seen by a fellow climber, far above the clouds, just a few hundred meters from the summit, moving upward with purpose and grace. Then, the weather shifted. The clouds came in, and Mallory and Irvine disappeared. Did they reach the top? It's a question that has lingered for nearly a century, like a flag fluttering somewhere just out of sight, high above the world. The 1924 expedition was a grand British affair, a blend of exploration and empire, romance and rigor. Everest had never been summited, and to do so would have been a feat of global importance. Mallory, when asked why he wanted to climb it, famously replied, "Because it's there." For decades, their fate was a mystery wrapped in ice and silence. Many believed they had perished in a storm before reaching the summit. Others held out hope, pointing to their skill, determination, and Irvine's oxygen expertise. but the mountain kept its secret. Then, in 1999, an American-led expedition made a startling discovery. High on Everest's north face, beneath layers of snow, lay the preserved body of George Mallory. His goggles were in his pocket, perhaps removed for a night descent. His rope had been torn, suggesting a fall. But Irvine's body and the camera they carried have never been found. That camera, if ever recovered, might contain a photograph that answers the century-old question: did Mallory and Irvine stand on the summit before they vanished into cloud? But perhaps the answer doesn't matter as much as the way the question still lives. Calmly, quietly, like the mountain itself. Today, climbers pass memorial stones bearing their names, not in sadness, but in reverence. They are not remembered for dying, but for climbing, for believing in something just out of reach, and for reaching toward it with courage and grace. In many ways, Mallory and Irvine have become part of Everest's soul, not lost, but folded into the wind and snow, resting forever where the earth meets the sky. Number 18. The Plain of Jars, Vessels in the Mist. High in the rolling hills of central Laos, nestled in quiet grasslands and scattered beneath wide skies, lies one of the world's most peaceful and puzzling archaeological sites. Across hundreds of square kilometers, enormous stone jars, some taller than a person, others smaller than a stool, sit quietly in the earth as if waiting. This is the Plain of Jars, and its mystery is as soft and steady as the fog that often blankets it. There are more than 2,000 jars across dozens of sites, the largest concentration centered near the town of Fonsavan. Some are simple and round. Others are carved with rims, bases, or lids that have long since vanished. They are hewn from solid stone, sandstone, granite, and limestone, each weighing between hundreds and thousands of kilograms. Who made them, and why? The oldest jars are thought to be more than 2,000 years old, dating back to the Iron Age. Yet no written record exists from the people who carved and placed them. The jars are too large and numerous to have been purely decorative. They seem meant for something. Perhaps to hold something important. Perhaps to mark a rite of passage. The most common theory is that the jars were burial vessels, part of a sophisticated funerary practice. Excavations have uncovered human remains, ceramic fragments, and burial goods nearby. Some scholars suggest the jars were used to decompose bodies before final interment, while others believe they held ashes or offerings. Still, there is no single answer. Local legends offer softer stories, that the jars were made by giants to brew rice wine for a victorious celebration, or that they were carved as gifts for ancient kings. These tales are not scientific, but they are full of warmth, and they remind us that history isn't always written in books. It often lives in the stories people tell one another under open skies. Despite their weight and size, the jars feel almost delicate, resting among wildflowers and breezes, quietly enduring time. Their age gives them gravity, but their presence feels light, serene. Sadly, the Plain of Jars has also known hardship. During the 20th century, the region was heavily bombed during conflict, leaving unexploded ordnance that still complicates excavation. Yet even in the shadow of war, the jars have remained stoic, untouched, reminders of a world much older and slower than our own. Today, conservation efforts are helping to protect the site, allowing visitors to walk respectfully among the ancient stones, watching how the light changes across them, how the earth seems to cradle them gently. The Plain of Jars may never reveal all its secrets, but perhaps its purpose was never to be solved, only to be witnessed, and to remind us that some mysteries are more beautiful when they remain softly unanswered. Number 19. The Paracas Candelabra, a beacon in the sand. Along the arid coast of southern Peru, facing the Pacific Ocean, a windswept peninsula juts into the sea. The cliffs are sun-bleached and ancient. The waves below crash rhythmically, echoing across the rocky shores. And high above them, etched deep into the desert hillside, is a massive, mysterious figure. It is known as the Paracas Candelabra, and for centuries it has looked out across the ocean with silent composure. The geoglyph is enormous, over 600 feet tall, and carved so deeply into the hard-packed soil that it has resisted erosion for more than 2 millennia. From sea level, it's invisible, but from the water or air, its outline appears clear and unmistakable. A long central stem branching symmetrically into 3 prongs, like a trident. Or perhaps, as its name suggests, a candelabra. No one knows for sure who created it or why. Some believe it was the work of the Paracas culture, which flourished in this region from around 800 BCE to 100 BCE. Known for their intricate textiles and elongated skull burials, the Paracas people left little in the way of written records. Yet they clearly had a strong connection to the land and to the heavens. Was the candelabra a navigational aid, guiding sailors home along the coastline? Its placement facing the ocean suggests so. Others think it had spiritual significance, perhaps connected to the constellations or local deities. There are even theories linking it to psychoactive plant use and ceremonial visions, especially since the figure resembles the shape of the Andean Jimson weed, a powerful hallucinogenic. More imaginative minds have connected the glyph to the Nazca Lines, further south, or even to ancient visitors from beyond the stars. But whatever its purpose, the candelabra was clearly meant to endure. What makes this mystery so serene is its presence, steady, unbothered, and monumental. Unlike the Nazca Lines, which stretch across flat plains, the Paracas Candelabra rises on a slope. Its makers must have climbed high with tools in hand, carving with intention, not for spectacle, but for meaning. Today, the glyph remains untouched. Winds blow gently across its grooves. Tour boats pass by below, pointing to it as it rests under the Peruvian sun. There are no crowds, no noise, just the outline in the earth and the quiet invitation it offers. Look, wonder, let it be. The Paracas Candelabra doesn't demand interpretation. Like a lighthouse with no flame, it continues to point to something, to somewhere, maybe even to nothing at all. And yet, in its mystery, it offers a kind of peace, a reminder that not everything must be explained to be meaningful. Some things are drawn simply to stay, etched in silence, lit by memory, and loved for the questions they never answer. Number 20. The Sacsayhuamán Megaliths, stones that fit like thought. Just outside the old Incan capital of Cusco, high in the green Peruvian Andes, there stands a wall unlike any other. Its blocks are vast, some as tall as a person, others weighing more than 100 tons. Yet they fit together so precisely, without mortar or filler, that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. This is Sacsayhuamán, and it has quietly defied explanation for centuries. The site was built by the Inca civilization, though some believe its foundations are older still. What survives today is just a fragment of what once existed, a sprawling complex of terraces, temples, and observation points carved into the landscape like poetry into parchment. But it's the stones that capture the imagination most. They're carved in irregular, almost puzzle-like shapes, some with as many as 12 sides. Yet they interlock with smooth perfection. There are no repeating patterns, no obvious plan. And yet the result is both functional and graceful. Walls that have withstood earthquakes, storms, and time itself. How did the Inca shape and move these stones? That question remains unanswered. They had no iron tools, no wheels, no beasts of burden to haul such massive blocks. And yet they achieved something modern engineers still marvel at. Some suggest they used techniques lost to time, heating and cooling stone to fracture it precisely, or using simple tools with great patience. Others propose unknown methods altogether. But the real beauty of Sacsayhuamán lies not in how it was made, but in how it feels. There's a quiet confidence in the stonework. No need for ornamentation. No rush to reveal its secrets. The walls seem to curve gently with the hillside, as though grown from the earth itself. Birds nest in the crevices. Moss softens the edges. Tourists walk slowly, pausing to touch the ancient surfaces, not to solve the mystery, but to share in it. Sacsayhuamán once served ceremonial purposes and may have been aligned with the sun during solstices. The Incas saw the land, the sky, and the stones as part of a single spiritual system, Pachamama, the Earth Mother. In that worldview, everything was alive. Perhaps these stones were shaped not just with tools, but with intention, with respect. Today, Sacsayhuamán watches over Cusco like a guardian, silent and still. It doesn't challenge you. It welcomes you. It whispers not of conquests or kings, but of craftsmanship and care, of people who moved mountains, not with force, but with harmony. And in that harmony, there is peace. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. I hope you enjoyed this story, and thanks for watching.